Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Justin Janowski, and he is the founder of Faith to Influence. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me on, Gary.
Great. So, Justin, tell me, how did you kind of get into the whole coaching business side of things?
Well, when I was 18, that's 18 years ago for me, I started in sales selling Cutco kitchen knives. Have you heard of those?
Oh, yeah.
That was my first sales and entrepreneurial opportunity. And it's a goofy job for a lot of people. For me, I loved it. And I hired my first coach while I was there. His name is Hal Elrod. He's pretty well known now for The Miracle Morning, which has been a very successful book and movement. And then I did some business to business sales after that. I actually did some financial planning. So I'm a little bit familiar with the world that you're in. And then I hired my next coach, Ben Skemper. And I realized as I was working with these coaches that I really loved the interaction I had with them and what it did for me personally and professionally, and thought, man, I want to do this too. And I felt like God was really calling me into it. And so he did. And I ended up working in sales for another coach for a few years and really learned the business. And then felt like I wanted to create a Christian version of that coaching business and be able to provide for Christian entrepreneurs and be able to bring God into the space of the coaching. And I decided to launch Faith to Influence. I did so in December of 2018, and God blessed my business. I did over 250 grand my first year, which is more than I imagined I would do. And it was for me, sales and business design and pricing, like those things that are tricky for a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs. Those things were just easy and fun for me. And that's why I now help other coaches launch and grow their businesses.
So what are the different, the coaching that you do? What is it? What coaching do you do? And the coaches that you coach, what do they do?
Yeah. I work mostly with Christian coaches, and they do all kinds of different things. Some of them are coaches for marriage coaches. Some of them are health and fitness coaches. Some of them are marketing coaches or some other form of business coaches. Some people that I work with help people with their purpose or direction in life. So all kinds of different industries that people are coaching in. What I do specifically is I help these coaches design and price their business models. So many people decide, I want to be a coach. I want to help people with this skill set I have, but they don't know how the business side of it works. So they don't know how to charge for that. And then the other thing that becomes a big roadblock for so many coaches and entrepreneurs is sales. They think, I'm not a salesperson, or sales is going to be pushy or greedy or sleazy, and I don't want to be a part of that. And so I teach people how to run a very high integrity sales process that also is high converting. So it's a win-win for them and their prospects.
Right. So when you first started out, what did it look like for you?
When I first started out, I was working with Christian entrepreneurial men. It was more of a men's group that I was working with. Now I work with men and women. It wasn't just coaches back then. It was entrepreneurs in general. But the way that I started my business is I kind of had two offers that I would have on a sales call with somebody. The first was one-on-one coaching, and I would charge $400 a month and have a couple of one-on-one coaching calls with people. And then the second offer was a live retreat where I would have 8 men come out to an Airbnb I would book. And I just hold the retreat for 3 days in the living room of the Airbnb, and we'd go on a hike and we'd have a bonfire and we'd have some sessions in the living room there and eat and pray together and just spend some time working on sales, leadership, relationships, and inviting God into the space. And then at that retreat, I would make an offer to an annual mastermind program or group coaching program for the men to join. And so that was my initial business model. And after my first retreat and my first handful of sales calls, I had over $100,000 in income booked. And I didn't know if I was going to make it in this business when I was starting. I told my wife, if I'm not earning this by 6 months in, I'll go get a job over here. But God really did provide through this opportunity. So that was really the launching point. And a few of those people were coaches. And as I started working with them, helping them build their coaching businesses, I realized that was my genius. That's what I was good at. That was the most fun, really lit me up. And I also I started the old fashioned way, like a lot of direct sales or entrepreneurial ventures. I reached out to people I knew. I reached out and asked for referrals. I had cups of coffee with people. I shared what I was doing and really just launched to me, the easy way, having real conversations with real people and inviting them to buy. And over time, I've expanded my marketing efforts a little bit and starting to get into more scale strategies now. But I found that early on, as long as I had a good reputation in the marketplace and I showed up well for people, I could work through the relationships of people I knew and referrals.
Now, how has it changed for you from the beginning, that, at the beginning to now?
So at the beginning, I mentioned like my audience shifted. So it was more of a men's group, kind of all encompassing a lot of different things. It was probably a little bit more than I felt like I was ready to take on. Like once I started dealing with like the deeper challenges around marriage and fathering and things like that. And I was newly married and newly a father and probably just wasn't ready to coach on those topics. Like it felt right to zero in on coaches. And I think narrowing our niche over time for all business leaders is really smart. The more narrow your niche is, the more easily you'll become known in the marketplace and you can become, really confident in what you're doing. Working with men and women now as well. And then I suppose my offerings and the way people get to those offerings have shifted a bit. So I used to just have a primary like $5,000 or $10,000 mastermind offer, and we still have programs in those price points. Uh, but now I've got a lower ticket membership as well. That is $75 a month, and there's an opportunity for recurring revenue in that, and helping more people at a lower price point. We launched that in January with 90 people in it, which is way more than I imagined we'd start with. God continues to just surprise and delight as we take on different opportunities like that. But I like having like those lower tiers of offerings. So now we've got a podcast where people can receive support for free. And then we've got the $75 a month program. And then we still got $5,000 and $10,000 engagements. And we also do sales for other coaches and 7 and 8 figure businesses in the marketplace, hire us to be their virtual or live sales team over short engagements. And sometimes we can make it 20, 50, even $80,000 in a weekend doing that, which is mind blowing. Right. Probably could make more money doing just that, but I like helping the new coach. And so I guess our tiers of offerings are different, and we do a lot more virtually now. So where I started out having people come to a live retreat and then making an offer to a higher ticket program, a lot more of what we do now is through Zoom 3-day retreats or a Zoom challenge or workshop and things like that, where we can invite people to the next step from there. We still hold a live summer conference, but fewer events for me as I'm more focused on spending time with my family and keeping my work hours between Monday and Friday.
Right. Now, speaking of family, how have you found your way to balance this? Because obviously anytime somebody starts up a new business or makes a shift in their business, it's very time consuming. How have you found getting that balance between, for you, between business, family, and God?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. For me, I feel like I'm not a hustler. Like I've worked hard at different seasons in my life. But I don't have a hustle muscle like some people do. I'm not the entrepreneur who wants to turn it back on after dinner or after bedtime with the kids. Like I really like working inside of smaller windows of time and being effective in the time that I work. I enjoy the time off with my family. I know I need the time with God. I need the Sabbath. I'm not really working on Saturdays and Sundays almost ever, unless there is a live event that we have to be at. So it's about boundaries for me and presetting my calendar. So every single November or December, I get into my calendar for the entire next year, and I book days off and I book weeks off, and I schedule in things like church and date night with my wife, and I put the Milwaukee Bucks schedule in there. I love going to Bucks games here locally. Whatever's important to me and fun, I try to get into my calendar. In fact, I was talking to my wife today that I really want more like local friendships, since I do live a Zoom life, a virtual life, it feels like at times. I want more strong local friendships. And so I looked up my church calendar, and there's a men's Bible study on Thursdays. It's from noon to 1 in my local town here at my church. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try that. And if I like it and if I want to make it part of my structure, then I'm just going to go to that every week. I'm just going to make it a recurring event. And so I put in my calendar the personal things that are important to me first, and then I build the business around that. But I also have boundaries around my calendar. If somebody gets my calendar link, they can't book before 9 a.m., they can't book after 5 p.m. It's only available Monday through Friday. And I really just stick to those boundaries. And so I feel like that's what's most important to me. As long as I'm pre-deciding how much I'm willing to work and in what kind of time frames I'm willing to work, and I stick to my boundaries, then things become a lot easier.
Right. Now, you talk about that you're not the hustler, and you're not, pushy and things like that. So how do you structure your sales calls? Because
Yeah.
lots of times, I mean, it always comes off, I'm going to say somewhat, depending on how you look at it, somewhat pushy, because you're asking somebody for money. I mean,
Yeah. I don't think it has to be pushy though. I think it can feel like an invitation. If I'm inviting somebody to something that could help their life, make their life a little bit better, or help them become more of who God created them to become. So a couple of things, like one, I want to make a note of the design of my offer. The design of my offer is such that I know it's not going to overwhelm me. I mentioned at the beginning of my business, I did more one-on-one coaching. I do that as little as possible now, and people have to pay a lot more for that because I like group format. And so for me, if I can hold a group call and have 20 people there at once in 1 hour, that's so much better than 21 hour calls.
right.
And so like part of what helps with my programs and my schedule is having a program designed in a way that feels light and fun for me. I think some entrepreneurs design something that's really heavy and exhausting, and they're the ones who designed it, maybe because that's what they saw somebody else doing, but they didn't realize that they could do it differently. So that's important to note. As far as my sales conversations are concerned, I believe that sales is simply as making it as easy as possible for the right people to say yes. And so I'm not trying to push, I'm not trying to force, I'm not trying to work through resistance. I'm not trying to impress or prove myself exactly on those sales calls. What I want to be a master of is asking great questions. And I know if I like ask deep, curious questions and discovery and curious questions about the future and the vision that people have for their lives or their businesses, what they really want, and I'm curious enough to really understand them more than most people do, and then ask questions about the problem or the challenge that stands in the way from them getting from where they're at to where they want to go. If I can help them identify that problem and commit to solving that problem, well, then if I've got a solution, I'm just going to tell them that. I'm going to say, hey, if you're committed to solving this problem, I'm really confident I can help. Would you like to hear how I work with my clients? And I'm asking them and I'm looking for consent and I'm looking for the invitation. And if we've had a really meaningful conversation at this point, and they've already experienced really my coaching, my leadership through the nature of the sales conversation we've had, and they're ready to invite me to share with them what it looks like, then I'm just going to tell them my way I work with my clients is this. I do this, 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 and this. We solve these kinds of problems in this way, and it costs this much. Is that something that you'd like to be a part of? And that I found that if I do it that way, and it's less pressure on me to like prove or impress or have great things to say, and I put more of the onus on asking really great questions to help people identify the problems they want to solve, the conversation becomes a lot easier. And even in responding to objections, I'm just going to be curious, calm, confident, and again, have a conversation rather than a scripted out, kind of pre-planned thing where I'm pushing them to a destination. I'm just open-minded and just trying to see what this person needs and figure out whether or not I can help them get what they need.
I have found over the years, lots of times people don't know what they need.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes it's hard to draw that out of them. What is it that they're truly looking for?
Yeah.
So I think the idea of asking the questions and getting them to, I'm going to say, admit what it is that they need or that they want makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. The questions are huge. And that's where like there's a sequence to it, right? So if I am asking questions about their present and past, and I ask enough to get really clear on where they're at, and then I ask really specific questions about what they want and where they want to go and what they want their business or life to look like. Or some of my coaches are going to ask about their marriage and what would they like their marriage to be like? And why is that so important to you? And what else do you want? And if we get really curious on this, the gap between the two starts to become really obvious. And most people actually do know what they need to change, what they need to do. So then if I ask the question, like, what's the biggest thing that's holding you back from fulfilling that vision or solving that problem or whatever it is. If they, like, many people will have more self-awareness than we give them credit for, and they probably will have the right answer here. But if somebody doesn't, I'm just going to ask the question again. If somebody says something that's way off base, I'm like, interesting, thanks for sharing. What else do you think is standing in your way? And I'm willing to ask that question 2 or 3 times until they come to the right answer. And if they really can't see it, sometimes people do have blind spots. That's, part of my opportunity as a coach is to see things that other people can't see. So then again, I'm going to ask permission to give them feedback. I'm going to say, I hear that. There's something else that I see that maybe you're not seeing. Are you open to receiving some feedback? And I'm going to get yes and consent. And then I'm going to give them the coaching. I'm going to give them the perspective that they need. Like going to a doctor who's the expert who can see the situation and tell them, like, you've got this going on and here's what you need.
Right.
And then I'm going to ask, how does that land for you? And if they're humble enough to be somebody who's going to receive my coaching in the first place, they're going to see the truth and what I shared. And they're going to say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And now we can start a relationship and go somewhere with that. But if they're really like, no, I don't think that's my problem, or that's not, then that's cool. Like, that person's not hiring me as their coach anyways.
Right.
Because here I am providing some coaching and feedback, and they're just a little bit closed off to it. And so if that were the case, I'd probably just be like, all right, cool. Well, I get it. That's really the thing that I think I see. And that's the thing I think it could help with. If that's not a problem that you want to solve right now, no worries at all. If you think about this conversation and come back to it later and realize, man, maybe there was something there and you want some help, this door is always going to be open. I'd love to talk to you in the future. I'm here to support you whenever I can. I'm happy to just let that go with abundance. Right. And, it'll come back if it's the right person, or maybe they'll even fight their way back right there. Like, now I'm taking it off the table. They might be a little bit more interested in it. But the truth is I can only help somebody who wants to be helped. And they either see the problem or I can see it and share it with them and they're willing to receive, or they're probably not my client.
Yeah. I think lots of times people, look at sales and that, oh, I got to make the sale because everybody wants to make money,
Sure.
And it's one of those things where I think lots of times if you can kind of take that step back and not feel that you have to make the sale. And I think it comes back to, the helping people, and in your case, God and your faith. How do you, when you're doing your sales process and stuff like that, how do you bring God and your faith into what you're doing?
Yeah. One of the first things I do is in my pre-call ritual before I begin a sales call, I just open up in prayer. I open up in prayer like before I even start the call. So if I'm going to meet somebody on Zoom, I like to prep myself a minute before, 2 minutes before, 3 minutes before. And, I'm going to pray for God to help me be in a great emotional state. God, help me to be confident, help me to be loving, help me to be peaceful. Amen. Like, I want to remind myself over and over that I don't need any one sale. I don't need any one client. I'm abundant. God gives me everything I need. There's way more opportunities, way more doors to open than I could ever possibly need. So I don't need this sale. I don't need this client. I'm here to help, but I'm also surrendering this to God. I'm trusting him. I might pray, God, if this is a fit, help me make it easy for the right person to say yes. If it's not a fit, help me to let this one go. And, recognize that I'm going to give my best on that call to serve and to be generous and to invite the right person. But then also to recognize that some of it's out of my control, and I don't need any one sale because God is abundant and gives me so much. And so that's really helpful for me, is just preparing myself before the call through prayer and through a surrender to God. And then, honestly, like even in the call, just trusting and trying to be at ease. And, if it's in a scenario where I don't think it's a fit, I might close in prayer. I might be like, hey, like, it doesn't seem like we're a fit to work together today. Can I wrap up in prayer though, before we end the call? Like, I'm happy to bring God there and like ask for direction, ask for support for this person, and just like pray for their best interest, whether it's working with me as a client or not. I can still pray that God helps them find the answers and the resources they need and solve their problems. And, then for me, it's when I do get a client, just continuing to pray and ask that God support me and speak through me and provide wisdom, and ask that God solve the problems that I can't solve, this client can't solve on their own, and
Sure.
know that it's bigger than me.
Yeah. I think that I think one of the things that you're saying there that's very important, and many people don't do it, before you start your sales call or any other, training or anything else, you're kind of stopping and bringing your mind and in your case, God forward and kind of getting in the right frame of mind, basically, before you start. And I think that that's so important because I see so many people and business owners and stuff, they're just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And they're losing because they're not in the right frame of mind. And when they're able to take a step back and reflect on it, it's like, damn, I could have handled that a little bit differently.
Yes.
And I think that's something that's important because I know there's times where, it's like the hustle and bustle of the day, tax season and this and that and another. And many times I need to do that. I need to take that step back and say, okay, why are you feeling stressed? Why are you feeling frustrated? And then say, okay, it's not because of this person or that person. It's kind of everything. Yeah. And you got to kind of push back and kind of clear your mind to be able to be present, in the moment, because I think that that's so important for people. And I know that I've, gone through different things in my life where it's like when I'm with my kids, it's like I'm present with my kids to make sure that they know that, because from business owners, we're coaching our employees. And if we're not present when they're asking us questions and stuff like that, then it comes off that, we don't care. We're not worried about them. We're not all the way down the road. And I think it's something that's important. And just in our lives, like we talked before, you were talking with your wife about stuff, and it's just like, obviously, if you're not present in that, that's going to have, issues and stuff like that. So I think that that's something that's really important for people, to get out of our talk today is that it is, when you're going to do that sale or you're going into that meeting or whatever it is, take that minute, gather yourself, clear your mind to be able to then go in, because if you don't, you're going to miss many opportunities because you're not thinking straight.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's one of the most important keys is caring for our emotional state. When I feel good, I get better results.
Oh yeah.
If I'm not feeling good, if I'm anxious, if I'm fearful, which is how some salespeople approach sales calls, emotions are contagious. But if I'm feeling confident, if I'm feeling peaceful, if I'm feeling loving, then that's going to be contagious too. And it creates just a better buying atmosphere. And to your point, like people just really want presence in today's world. It's harder to find that. And so like there are times where I've got a busy day and I'm back to back to back to back, or my mind is in like 5 different places at once. There's a number of different priorities that I'm thinking about. And I shared with you when we were getting on this call, I didn't have time to prep really for this call. Like I didn't have time to look back and say, hey, how did we get connected? And to listen to one of your podcast episodes before we started talking. But what I always have time for is a few seconds before I click play to take some deep breaths, to say a quick prayer. Because if I prepare myself emotionally to be ready for our conversation, then even if I'm not mentally all there, or I'm feeling a little bit sick, or I've had a busy day, or whatever's going on, like if emotionally I'm feeling good, I can overcome almost anything. Right. And so that 30 seconds, 1 minute can make all the difference in the world, even on a day where you are really busy.
Yeah. And I think, and again, when you're talking with somebody, if it's a sales call or if it's not a sales call, they can see and feel that emotion, that you have. And like you said, I mean, if somebody's doing a sales call with you and you feel that desperation in them, you're most likely not going to buy from them because it's just like, okay, well, why are they so freaking desperate?
Right.
Type thing. So
not attractive. That's for sure.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right, Justin, we covered a lot of good stuff. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
What have you not asked me that I wish you had? I really like the questions you asked me. I'll say that. I guess if you asked me, what's the most important part of your sales process? I'd probably tell you this. that to me, pre-framing the sales call is the most important thing. It's how we open the call and set the stage for what's about to happen. If I was doing this in like financial services world, I might say like, hey, John, thanks so much for taking the time to connect with me today. I want to make the best use of your time and mine. So I just like to lay out a structure for this call. Would that be okay? Yes, cool. The reason we're connecting is you're a business owner who wants help with your taxes. You want to optimize what you're keeping for yourself and for your family, and versus what you're paying to the IRS. And I help business owners to maximize their earnings and their opportunity through tax strategies and financial strategies that are thoughtful and strategic. And my outcome on a call like this today is to get to know you better and to see whether or not it's a fit for us to work together. And to get to that outcome, I'd like to ask you some questions about where you're at in your business right now, what's going on financially. And I want to talk about your vision for the future and what you'd like to experience from both a business and financial standpoint moving forward. And then discuss some of the challenges that you faced around taxes and around finances in your business. Right. From there, I'll give you some coaching and perspective based on what I hear. And if it seems like a good fit, I'll explain really specifically how I work with my clients. And you and I can decide either to work together or not work together. And either way is fine. Does that sound good? And I get consent there to move forward. So like I'm laying out this structure that feels safe. It feels professional. I'm getting consent to everything that we want to do. And like that setting the stage for the conversation makes everything easier. And no matter what you're selling, you can do that. I do it in coaching. You can do it in financial planning. You can do it as a realtor. You can do it in, really any capacity that you're showing up in a business or sales conversation. So to me, that pre-framing is the most important step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Justin, people like what they've heard and they would like to talk to you. How can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
One easy way is to go to goodsalespdf.com, goodsalespdf.com. And on that page, you can sign up for our 10-step sales process. So I mentioned the pre-frame. That's one of the 10 steps. And we have like an exact structure of like how to design your own pre-frame for your sales conversation. And so we'd give that along with all of our best sales content for free at goodsalespdf.com. And when people sign up for that, then they get on our email list. So you'll get my podcast and you'll get our weekly newsletter, and you can email me back directly and I'll see your email and be able to reply to you. So that's probably the easiest way, but people are also welcome to just find me on social media and follow me there, Justin Janowski.
Great. Really appreciate your time today and your words of wisdom. I think that anybody, any business owner, because again, we all are doing sales, and it's just, a lot of good words today. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Gary.
Thank you. Hey, this week, our guest was Justin Janowski, and he is the founder of Faith to Influence. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.